Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, yeah, share my screen. Okay, can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, welcome everybody to day 2 of Intro to Science. If you guys weren't here yesterday, I just provided an overview of what we were going to learn this week. So you didn't really miss much. And today, I'll be talking about biology. So, without further ado, let's get to it. So, for those of you who don't know what biology is basically a branch of science, which is a study of living things. And so living things are basically animals. So us, birds and dogs, for example, and plants. So trees, grass, and bushes, for example. And so let's talk about what exactly makes living things special. So living things, we call them organisms. So remember that, guys. Organisms have certain unique abilities that let them survive and live. So I'll go over the abilities. There's like 6 or 7. So first of all, they can grow and change over time. So, you obviously start off as a baby and then you grow into a full adult. Same thing with dogs. They go from puppies to adults. And plants, which start off as seeds and grow into full plants. So here's just like a little graphic of a seed turning into a little plant. And the next we have right here, living things can make their own babies, even plants. So in the scientific world, we call this reproduction. Well, you guys don't really have to worry about that right now. And so animals, they have babies, and plants, they have tiny seeds. And also, in order to be a living thing or an organism, you have to be able to sense and react to whatever is around you. So whenever whenever there's like loud noises that get produced, in movies, birds typically fly away from like a forest if you've seen that before, but it's kind of common. And also, fun fact, plants can bend towards the sunlight to get the sun they need. So if you guys haven't learned this already, plants need sunlight to survive. So here's an example. This plant is bending towards the window, which is giving it sunlight. Next, living things. So I'll go with organisms. Okay, just remember that organisms need energy to stay alive and do what they do every day. Animals get energy from eating food, and plants get their energy through the sun. And this is a special process called photosynthesis. Living things can also keep whatever is going on inside them stable. So this means their body temperature is okay. You sweat to cool down or shiver to warm up. For example, if you've ever gone through a lot of exercise, your body's warming up. So that's why you guys sweat. Plants also do this, and they kind of just balance the water that they take in to make sure it's right. Last but not least, living things can change themselves for their surroundings. So, for example, sometimes you see some animals that have camouflage. Maybe you've seen this in pictures or maybe in National Geographic. They have special colors or patterns that lets them hide from their predators or animals that eat them. And certain plants are shaped in a certain way to help them survive different environments. So, for example, right here we have a chameleon. That's a type of lizard that kind of blends in with its environment. As you can see, it's kind of green here, blends in with the leaves. So any questions so far or no? Okay, I think that is a no. Moving on. If you guys ever need me to just stop and like slow down, just let me know, okay? So moving on, we have ecosystems and food chains. So living things, they're part of like big communities called ecosystems where different organisms work together or work and live together. So right here, here's an example. Here's kind of like a little pond. So we have snails, water weeds, flies, tadpoles, and a bunch of different animals and plants that work together to keep harmony. So in an ecosystem, yes, as I said before, they interact and they kind of form a neighborhood. They have different parts to them. So first of all, we have producers, and producers are living things that make their own food using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. And so I think you guys know the first two, but if you don't know carbon dioxide, that's just the gas that we breathe out. We and other animals. And this process, as I've stated before, is called photosynthesis. So producers, plants, those are usually producers, or algae in ponds. Secondly, we have consumers, and consumers are organisms that get their energy from eating other organisms. So there's three types of consumers. Number one, we have herbivores, and herbivores are basically plant eaters. Next, we have carnivores, and carnivores are meat eaters, so they eat animals. And last but not least, we have omnivores, which are both plant and meat eaters. And finally, the last part of an ecosystem is our decomposers. And these organisms are the organisms that basically break down dead organisms and waste. And that returns the nutrients to the ecosystem. And that kind of creates a full cycle since plants need the nutrients to produce energy. And so an example of this is mushrooms. Okay, now we have, now I'll explain to you what a food chain is. So food chains are basically a chain of how energy is passed among organisms. So I'll give you an example. So for the first chain of a food chain is our producers. And producers, for example, grass right here. The producers, so this grass is going to be eaten by an herbivore. And for this example, it's a grasshopper. And then the herbivore is eaten by a omnivore or carnivore, so a bird. And then this cycle keeps going on and on until the consumer dies. So the bird, once this bird dies, it will be decomposed by a decomposer. But in this food web, it keeps going to a snake, and then an eagle, and then gets decomposed. So there's a bunch of different levels to food chains, and it can keep going on and on depending on the ecosystem. So any questions so far, or are we all good? You can just use the chat if you guys want. No worries. Wait, can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure I'm not talking to myself. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay. All right, thank you guys. So let's move on to cells. And cells is honestly my favorite part of biology. So our bodies, as you know, you're in a body. And so in the world, okay. Your bodies are made up of tiny building blocks called cells. And so these cells they're really small, and they're basically the tiniest living units in your body that kind of work together to make your body function, right? So breathing, there's a bunch of different cells that go into breathing, into like moving, and moving your hand. Your heart beats. So there's a bunch of different cells that are working together to make your heart beat. These cells are, as I said, really small, and you cannot see them with your bare eyes. You need a microscope to see them. So cells, they have a bunch of different parts in them that help them do their jobs. The heart, as I said, the hearts, lungs, and stomachs, so they're called organs. Okay, so there's a bunch of different organs in your body that work to keep you alive. So cells, they have their own mini organs called organelles. So in case you guys kind of don't understand, I'll show you in the next slide. So here's an example of a cell. So a cell has a bunch of different organelles, all of these little organelles over here. And so I'll go on to talk about what these organelles do. So firstly, we have a cell membrane. Okay, so the cell membrane is a barrier around the cell, and it's like a border which controls what goes in and out of the cell and also protects the cell. Then we have the nucleus. This is the nucleus over here. That's basically the headquarters of the cell, and it has our DNA. So if you've seen like detective movies or something, they talk about DNA. So I'll get into that in a minute. But DNA is basically instructions that tell the cell how to work. Next, we have the cytoplasm. And so yeah, this whole area, basically the majority of the cell is the cytoplasm. And that's basically the living room where all the organelles hang out, float around, and do their jobs. The next one, you'll probably hear this very often as you grow older, the mitochondria, and which is a powerhouse of the cell. So right here, this is the mitochondria, and this produces the energy the cell needs to function. So then we have the vacuoles. So the vacuoles are these blue structures over here. Typically, there's multiple in a cell. They're tiny storage containers within the cell, and they hold basically important stuff the cell needs, such as water and other materials. Now we have the lysosomes. Lysosomes are over here, these little like cyanish circles, and they're the recycling centers of the cell. And they keep the cells clean, so they clean around by breaking down waste. So waste is basically materials that we don't need, or they're byproducts of other processes, and I'll talk about that in a second. Now we have the endoplasmic reticulum, and this helps move important stuff around your cells. So they're basically like the road. Think of endoplasmic reticulum or the ER as like roads, the road system around the cells. They just transport things like protein and other materials. And now we have ribosomes, and these little tiny little dots are basically like little factories in your cell, and they make protein. So protein they're basically workers that do a bunch of different jobs around the cell and in your body. So they help cells grow, they help you grow, they help repair damaged parts of the body, they help make up who you are, they do a bunch of different stuff. So keep that in mind, proteins are extremely important. And now we have the Golgi body right here, this weird green little structure. And so that's basically a post office, and that puts the proteins that the ribosomes produce in little packages, special packages. And so that means sometimes it modifies proteins or just sends them away to different parts of the cell or even outside of the cell. So so these little cells, they make up body systems. And you might know a lot of these already. So you have muscles, lungs, bones, heart, your stomach, nerves. So I'll go more into depth about that. So there's 6 main body systems you guys should know. First, we have the skeletal system, and that is basically the body's framework. Okay, so right here, these bones, they make up your body. It allows you to stand straight. It allows you to how does a cell die? Oh, okay. So a cell, there's a lot of ways a cell can die. A lot of times a cell, it doesn't get enough nutrients that it needs to do what it's doing, right? And so eventually it just dies, and kind of like, I've seen like videos where it just like kind of implodes, right? So sometimes that can be a way it dies. Sometimes it dies automatically. So I'm pretty sure you've heard of cancer before, I think, right, Ritik? Have you heard of cancer before?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So cancer is basically cells, they grow like crazy amount, right? Like a really crazy amount. And so sometimes there's a defense system the body has. And so the body can detect if a cell is going to be cancerous or something, and then it just tells the cell to like die, right? So it's like kind of like self-destruction. Or sometimes maybe the cell is exposed to like harmful chemicals. So like the sun, right? The sun has harmful light. If you expose yourself way too much, right? UV rays, for example, then yeah, that can damage like your body because it kills off cells. So that's the same thing with X-rays. X-rays produce like really harmful radiation, and that can kill some of your cells. But I mean, as long as you don't do too many X-rays, you'll be fine because your cells heal by itself. They grow. But does that answer your question, Rithik?
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course, of course. Do you have any other questions?
No, not really.
Okay, cool, cool. How about the rest of us? If you guys have any questions, just let me know. All right, I'm here for a little bit, so I'll just do my best. But moving on. So as I said, we have the skeletal system, and that includes all the bones in your body. As I said, if you didn't have bones, you'd kind of be walking around like a jellyfish, like floppy everywhere. Okay, so they're extremely important in keeping you upright and keeping making you who you are. Then we have the muscular system, and that is one of the also a really important system. Well, all of them really are, but this helps you move your bodies. And so you can think of them like as engines that power your movements. So whenever you jump, you run, smile, throw a football, maybe a bunch of different movements, right? Your muscles are moving, they're working, okay? So we have muscles in our arms, legs, and even our face. So they help us do all sorts of different activities, such as playing sports to giving somebody a high five. The respiratory system is basically it helps you breathe, includes two lungs, and these lungs are like giant balloons in your chest, right? So when you inhale, you bring in oxygen, right? Just try it real quick. If you inhale, your lungs expand, and then when you exhale, your lungs will like contract, right? So that's kind of the basic process of breathing. When you contract, you take out carbon dioxide. So the oxygen that the lungs take in are delivered to the body cells. And the cells needed to survive, Rithik, as you asked earlier, the cells need to survive they use oxygen, they use water, they use a bunch of different vitamins, right, in order to survive. Now we have the circulatory system, and that is basically a transportation network in your body. So it starts off with the heart over here. It's a little heart. And then the heart keeps pumping, right? It pumps blood to the rest of the body, and blood is needed everywhere in the body. If like one part of the body doesn't get blood, then that part will pretty much stop working and it'll pretty much die. So yeah, it's really important. Now we have the digestive system, and that just helps us break down and absorb food. So it includes our so right here. So this is the mouth over here, and then the stomach, and then the intestines. When you eat, the teeth chew the food, right? If you guys can see me, the teeth chew the food goes down, right, into the stomach breaks down the food, and then the intestines break it down further, and then the intestines absorb all the nutrients and vitamins you get from food and kind of just take it through the body, right? And finally, we have the nervous system, and that's just the body's communication system. So right here, so we have the brain, right? And so the brain is kind of like the central like CPU, right? It's the computer of the whole entire body. So the brain helps us think, learn, and feel. And our messages, our nerves right here, our nerves are all over our body. They send messages to the brain, and the brain sends messages back to the body. So if you ever feel a tickle, right? If you ever feel a tickle, the nerves will send a message to the brain, and the brain will tell the part that's being tickled to like move. Any questions, guys? Okay. Moving on. So yeah, here's just a close-up images of each system. So here's the skeletal system, right? I'm not going to go into depth about everything. Okay. I'm not going to go into depth about everything. I'll probably maybe at a later date, I'll go more in depth if you guys are interested. But yeah, this is the skeletal system. This is the muscular system. It looks kind of weird in this picture, but here is the respiratory system. You can see close up. And then next we have the circulatory system, which has a heart and the vessels, the digestive system, and last but not least, our nervous system. So with that being said, I like to conclude my day every day by giving you some fun facts. So today I'll give you some fun facts about biology. So our brain weighs approximately 3 pounds. Your heart beats about 100,015 times a day. Wait, no, 115,000 times a day. The human body, so as I said earlier, the cells, right? There's around 37 trillion cells in your body, which is honestly crazy to think about. The human eye has about 2 million working parts. So yeah, just this eye alone has like 2 million parts that work together to make you see. It's crazy. Scientists believe that there are more than 10 million different kind of cell life forms on Earth. And this is kind of funny, but your nose gets warmer when you lie. So there's something to think about. All right. So yeah, now it's Q&A. If you have any questions, if you guys want me to go back and explain, now's your time to shine. But if not, you guys are free to go. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you guys and have a wonderful day.
Bye.
All right, take care, Ritik. What will I be teaching tomorrow? All right, goodbye, Sahajleen. Tomorrow I'll be teaching chemistry. So chemistry is something you guys should definitely stay in, be excited for. Trust me. Take care. Thank you, Rashi. All right. I'm gonna end the meeting now. Have a wonderful day for those of you guys here.